All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a truly thrilling journey through one of the most famous stories ever put to paper, Charles Dickens' absolute classic, Oliver Twist. Now, to really grasp this story, we actually need to look at the guy who wrote it. Born in 1812, Dickens didn't just casually invent all the misery you're about to see, he lived it. When he was just 12 years old, his father, a clerk, was thrown into a debtor's prison. And young Charles? He was pulled out of school and forced into brutal, exhausting warehouse labor. Those deep personal scars totally fueled his writing. He used his own experience to highlight the massive hardships of the poor in Victorian England, basically transforming his own childhood poverty into this incredible, universal story of vulnerable innocence. And well, that brings us right to our young hero.
Please, sir, I want some more. You've probably heard it before, right? It's arguably one of the most iconic quotes in all of literary history. And it so brilliantly captures the desperate, maddening hunger of young Oliver. It's such a simple request, but it immediately drops us into the freezing, unforgiving reality of 19th century England. Just imagine being so incredibly starved that you would risk absolutely everything just for a second helping of watery, tasteless gruel. Chapter 1. The Grim Workhouse. So Oliver's life is steeped in tragedy from literally minute one. He's born in a grim parish workhouse to a beautiful young woman who had just been found lying in the street the night before. Tragically, she dies within minutes of his birth. A harsh parish official named Mr. Bumble actually gives Oliver his unusual name. Then, by the time he's 10 months old, he's shipped off to a branch workhouse run by an elderly woman named Mrs. Mann. And here is the real kicker. The parish actually pays a weekly fee for the orphan's care, but Mrs. Mann just pockets most of the money for herself. It's a brutal reminder of how systemic greed just preys on the most vulnerable people. Because he's starved of basic nutrition, Oliver grows up to be a small, pale, and incredibly thin child. Finally, at 9 years old, he's dragged back to the main workhouse to learn a trade. And that leads us to the fateful night. The boys in the workhouse are so intensely hungry, they literally feel like they might go mad. They actually draw lots to see who has to go up and ask for more food. And, of course, it falls to Oliver. So, holding his little bowl and spoon, he walks up to the stupefied master. The master is so utterly shocked and enraged by this supposed rebellion that he physically strikes Oliver on the head. And as if that wasn't enough, they take this 9-year-old boy and lock him in a dank, miserable cell where he rots for weeks. Chapter 2. Welcome to London. Desperate to escape this wretched existence, Oliver is apprenticed to an undertaker named Mr. Sowerberry, where things are so bad he's forced to sleep among literal coffins. After a terrible fight and threats of being sent right back to the workhouse, Oliver runs away. He walks 70 grueling, painful miles with bleeding feet until he finally reaches the outskirts of London. Just when he feels he can't take another step, his luck seemingly changes. He's exhausted, shivering on a doorstep, when he runs into this wildly confident boy named Jack Dawkins, better known to everyone as the Artful Dodger. The Dodger actually buys him a real hot meal, which Oliver absolutely wolfs down, and promises him a free place to stay with a nice old gent right in the city. But as you can probably guess, this place is not exactly a 5-star hotel. The Dodger leads Oliver through a terrifying, confusing maze of dark, smelly streets into a very old, run-down part of London. And here, he finally meets this nice old gent, a man named Fagin. Fagin is a very old, shriveled-up creature with a villainous face and a massive mop of matted red hair. But despite his super creepy appearance, he actually gives Oliver a warm meal and points him to an old mattress on the floor to sleep. For a boy who was just sleeping among coffins, this probably felt like an absolute luxury. But here is the terrible truth we soon discover about our new friends. Fagin is actually the ringleader of a gang of thieves. Over the next few days, the Dodger and the other boys head out into the city and bring back pocketbooks and handkerchiefs, which they hand over to Oliver to sort. Oliver is so deeply innocent, he has absolutely zero idea these items are stolen. The deep corruption of London goes completely over his head. That is, until one fateful day, out on the streets, when he watches the Dodger and another boy actively pickpocket an old gentleman who's just standing there looking at a bookstall. Suddenly, the reality of what actual out-and-out stealing is hits Oliver like a ton of bricks, and he takes off running in absolute terror. Chapter 3. A Glimpse of Hope. So that old gentleman who was robbed, a man named Mr. Brownlow, mistakenly assumes Oliver is the thief.
Oliver gets punched, knocked flat into the mud, and dragged before a very grumpy magistrate named Mr. Fang. But just as Oliver literally faints from a terrible fever right there in the courtroom, the bookseller rushes in and clears his name. Realizing his mistake, Mr. Brownlow takes pity on the sick boy and brings him home. And talk about a night and day difference. We go from Fagin's filthy den of stolen goods and dirty mattresses straight to the warmth of Mr. Brownlow's home. Oliver wakes up in a quiet, beautiful, shady room being cared for by Mrs. Bedouin, a plump, motherly housekeeper with a super sweet expression. For the very first time in his entire life, Oliver is shown genuine, loving care. And while Oliver is recovering in bed, something incredible happens. Mr. Brownlow keeps staring at the boy. He realizes that Oliver bears an incredibly striking resemblance to a portrait of a pretty young lady hanging right there on his wall. Brownlow points out that Oliver's eyes, his mouth, his entire expression are a dead ringer for the face in that picture. It's a massive clue to Oliver's true identity, setting up this really wonderful mystery for us. Chapter 4. Trapped by the Gang. Meanwhile, back in the slums, Fagin is absolutely freaking out that Oliver will peach or betray the gang to the police. He knows Oliver has to be found no matter what. Fagin turns to a young girl in his gang named Nancy. Now at first, she flat out refuses to go to the police station to look for clues, but a cruel, bullying thug named Bill Sykes threatens her with violence. Nancy, who turns out to be a fantastic actress, heads to the station, bursts into these dramatic fake tears, wails about her missing dear little brother, and completely tricks the soft-hearted policeman. She finds out that Oliver was taken by an old gentleman living near Pentonville in North London. The trap is officially set. Back at the house, Oliver is just so eager to repay Mr. Brownlow's kindness. He literally begs to be the one to return some books to the bookshop and deliver a £5 note. He's feeling so proud walking down the street in the brand new clothes Mr. Brownlow bought for him. But before he can even reach the shop, Nancy jumps out of nowhere, flings her arms around his neck, and loudly pretends she's finally found her runaway brother. And Bill Sykes is waiting right there to help her. He snatches the books, hits Oliver on the head, and drags the completely dazed boy through a maze of narrow streets straight back to Fagin's den. Fagin is absolutely delighted. Oliver is trapped once again. Chapter 5. The Botched Burglary. Fagin makes absolutely sure Oliver has zero chance of escaping this time. He strips him of his nice new suit and forces him back into his old, dirty rags. But then things go from bad to a total nightmare. Bill Sykes needs a small boy to help him commit a robbery. On a pitch-black, foggy night, Sykes drags Oliver to a dark, dilapidated house just outside London. The terrifying sequence of events kicks into gear. Sykes gathers his accomplices, loads up his pistols, and grabs his crowbars. He literally holds a loaded pistol right to Oliver's head and threatens to blow his brains out if he makes a sound. He then forces the terrified boy through a tiny window, giving him strict commands to go down the hall and unlatch the front door for the gang. But Oliver has an incredibly brave heart. He makes a split-second decision to try and warn the family sleeping inside. Unfortunately, the robbers are heard. Two men suddenly appear at the top of the stairs, a gun flashes in the dark, and Oliver feels a fierce, burning pain in his arm. He's been shot. Sykes drags the bleeding boy back outside, but as the alarm bells start ringing, the robbers just abandon Oliver in a muddy ditch and flee back to London. The very next morning, a dazed, heavily bleeding Oliver staggers back to the very same house they just tried to rob. And this is where fate steps in again. The people living there, Rose Maylai and her aunt, take pity on the poor little guy. They carry him upstairs to nurse him back to health instead of handing him right over to the police. Chapter 6. A Deadly Secret. Now, once Oliver recovers under the incredibly kind care of the Maylai family, a doctor named Losburn takes him back to London. Their mission? To find Mr. Brownlow and finally clear Oliver's name. But prepare yourselves for a real gut punch here. When they arrive at the street, the house is completely shut up, with a big "To Let" sign swinging outside. They find out Mr. Brownlow had gone away 6 weeks previously, sailing far across the Atlantic Ocean to the West Indies. Oliver just bursts into tears. To him, this means the one man who believed in him must have left thinking Oliver was just a deceitful, dishonest little thief who ran off with his bucks and his cash. He is absolutely crushed. But hey, remember Nancy? She actually holds the key to this entire mystery. A few days earlier, Nancy had been hanging around Fagin's house and managed to secretly listen in on a hushed conversation between Fagin and this mysterious, deeply sketchy man named Monks.
And guys, this is huge. Nancy overhears that Monks is actually Oliver's younger brother. And Monks is secretly paying Fagin to arrange to have Oliver killed so that Monks can steal the boy's rightful inheritance. Nancy suddenly realizes exactly how high the stakes are. She takes a massive, life-threatening risk. She sneaks out of the slums, tracks down Rose Maylie at her hotel in London, and spills everything. Nancy tells Rose she would gladly give her own life to save Oliver. It's such a powerful moment, showing us that even in a world dripping with grime and corruption, pure innocence can inspire some truly profound sacrifices.
And that brings us to a terrifying cliffhanger. To help protect Oliver, Nancy agrees to secretly meet Rose and a gentleman on London Bridge every Sunday night between 11 and midnight. That gentleman? It's Mr. Brownlow, who we find out actually is back in London and deeply intrigued by Rose's story. They all agree they have to meet this girl to learn everything they can. But Fagin is getting super suspicious of Nancy's erratic behavior and is secretly having her followed. So I leave you with this final thought to chew on. Will Nancy's incredibly brave secret save Oliver's life, or will it ultimately seal his doom? Because the ruthless thieves and criminals she lives with will absolutely kill her if they discover what she's done. You'll just have to dive into the rest of Dickens's masterful tale to find out. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.